Okay, so if you click on, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. If you two don't mind dropping in the link to the bit.ly as people come in, if you notice that they come in after. Okay, so just a quick rundown / refresher on what a playlist is. If you joined us for the intro to blended learning, we talked really quickly about playlists as a part of the blended learning experience. So it is a model of blended learning. You can combine different learning experiences or activities that pertain to a particular skill set all in one for students, like as a package. And it does allow for an extremely personalized experience for students, which is obviously the direction that we're all headed in, as we know that it provides a more rich experience for students. It can actually be used as one station in the station rotation model. So like if you're going through a couple of stations one day, you might have a playlist that students visit every day. So they don't complete it that one day, but it's just a station. It can also flow through the station rotation model. So you can work through a playlist through stations. And that's kind of what we're doing today. We had our teacher table, then we broke off into our stations, and then we're coming back. It can also, well, it does allow students to have control over the pace of their learning as well as the path of their learning. And we'll talk about that more here in a little bit when I get into the example. So it's a quick rundown on what a playlist is. I know the first time I heard it, I was like, what does this have to do with music? Because that's all I know a playlist from. So it's like a playlist where you pick all the songs you like and you put them into your playlist, and that's what you listen to, right, for your enjoyment. This is similar, where students grab the activities that fit for them, their learning style, and they put it into a playlist, or we as teachers grab all of these things and put it together to create a learning experience for students. So I'm so excited because we're just going to get into the designing. Okay, so I have to just give this disclaimer that I do have a ton of links that are going to be available for you. It can be extremely overwhelming once you get into Link City, and hopefully they all work. Don't be afraid to let me know or request access if they don't, but they should. I'm kindly asking you to just like follow along with me so that you can avoid feeling overwhelmed. And at the end of the presentation, I have all of these documents available for you. So we are going to get into the designing. I'm going to show you an example of a playlist that I have worked through with Allison Lau for Spanish 1, Unit 1.1. So we are going to use this in the fall, whether it's virtual or in person. We're not sure yet how we're going to use it, but we're using it. And that's the beauty of the playlist, is that it can be used online or in person, and it works really well. So obviously this is linked for you to access. I'm going to click on it and walk through each section with you to explain it more in detail. So if you want to click on this document and follow along with me on your own computer, you're welcome to, or you can just follow my screen, whatever works for you. Okay, so basically what we did was develop a planning guide for you. Okay, so it can be overwhelming to develop a playlist. So what you're going to receive is this whole document, but the right column will be blank, and it'll just have the left side, which is your guide. So I'm going to go through each task, each planning task, and then I'm going to show you what planning element we decided fit with that task. Okay? Please chime in the chat anytime if something is like, whoa, what? If I skip something. So this is our teacher planning document. We all across the board need to start with social emotional learning. Like if we are not addressing that, like you're missing the mark, because our students are not going to learn if they don't have a connection with their teacher, especially after what they've been through. So that should be at the forefront. And normally I'm a huge advocate for target language. At this point, I really feel like this daily check-in, or however you choose to address social emotional learning, can be done in the first language, because it's going to lower the affective filter that our students have, and they're really going to feel like it's a genuine connection with the teacher and not like, oh, I need to show that I know my emotions vocabulary or, you know, whatever. So I created this daily check-in in English with these three questions. So what is your name? Which emotion are you feeling today? And you have access to this. You just have to make a copy. And it's just a Google form. So they'll fill this out and I will receive it. That way I can kind of check in with students whether they're virtual or in my class, okay? So that's how I chose to address the social emotional learning needs for this particular experience. The next task for planning is to think about the foundation. Okay, so we're really getting into the backwards designing of our learning experience for students, starting with the learning outcomes. So these are the 3 learning outcomes that we decided to tackle, took them straight from our curriculum map. And you don't always have to do 3. You can do 1, because thinking about the AP level, your outcomes are so much more profound normally. So you want to maybe just address 1. It's totally up to you. The more you choose, the more complex it gets, obviously. So then you have the question, how many class meetings are students going to have to work on this? I think that's one of the #1 things that people normally get confused about with playlists is students don't have to complete it in 1 class meeting. This can span over however long you want. So that's the beauty of it. We chose 3 class meetings, but we were even talking about it yesterday. We were like, it could take more. We just don't know right now. We don't know where our students are, what's happening. If this SEL is no bueno, we're gonna have to pump the brakes and address that before we can really get into this super heavily. So it could take us longer. Okay, so then we have, what will your playlist look like for students? Gosh, you have so many options here. And this is where you really have the opportunity to make it your own. I have some options here. It is not the end all be all. You can do traditional playlist, a drag and drop that I will show you. You could do a choice board. You could just do slide deck. It doesn't matter. It's totally whatever works for you. I have some options here that we created and I will go through those shortly. And then here is where I like to think about linking the video that I will make for students that goes over the whole playlist, because obviously I need to have some type of instructions for students. So I would think that that would be a really good place to link it. And if you're questioning, well, making videos is so hard for me, I would, after this session, make sure that you have a chance to watch Allison Moy's recording about creating videos. Okay, so then we move on to the pre-assessment. This is so important because this is really where you get to obviously gauge where students are coming from. You have so many different options for the pre-assessment. You could have an exit ticket from a previous class that students take, and you quickly sort them out and put them into different groups or pathways. You could have them fill out a Google form, and at the end of the Google form, it tells them their pathway. Or, I mean, the options are endless. We chose the exit ticket path because this is in the very beginning of the year, and we know in level 1 they're not going to have a lot of, you know, background knowledge. So we are actually doing an exit ticket from the previous class, which basically just checks if they grasped the skills that we talked about. And if they didn't, then we're going to record a video that they will watch before they can move on to anything in the playlist. So that's the caveat. If they don't do well on the exit ticket, they have to watch that video before moving on. If they did well, they just begin the playlist. And I'll show you what that looks like on their version here in a little bit. So now we get into how will students apply the content? So again, backwards design, thinking about where students are going and how they'll get there. So this is your output or evidence of learning, however you want to think about it. We agreed that they were going to show their learning through a minor assessment. And I linked it for you here. It's going to look a little bit different for FISD teachers because we use Canvas as our learning management system. So this minor will already be in Canvas for us. It's not published just yet, but it will be. And so what we would do is we would grab this assignment and we would put it in our Canvas course, and eventually students would take this once they feel ready. So as they work through the playlist, they should build all of the skills necessary to be able to work through this assignment. And I have copies for you. This was created by Lindsay Bowen. I don't know if you're here, Lindsay, but if you are, shout out. She made, she took content and put it all into Canvas for us, and it's beautiful. So this is what students are going to work towards. This is our output. Okay, that is our evidence of learning. So now we're thinking about our formative checks. How the heck are we going to check for understanding and provide feedback? We need to think about that. So there's different ways. Teacher table is so important because that's where you get the one-on-one time with students and provide that personalized feedback. You could do Google Form, Edpuzzle, Socrative, I mean, so many options. We decided, you know what, we're going to do the first check as a teacher table. They're going to complete this assignment here, which is a quick write. And then before they submit, they're going to come show us or email us or however you choose to set it up. They could fill it out on paper, whatever it is that you choose. They're going to come show us that, and really quickly we're going to look at it and say either, oh, you need to go back and do this, or yeah, move on in your playlist. Okay, so if they are not ready, we're going to send them back to do some other activities that we've created, and I'll show you those. If they're ready, they'll move on to the next activities in their playlist. Then we decided we're going to have a second check, just thinking about our outcomes, where all they do is come tell us, they're going to come up to us and they're going to say, feliz. And for us, that's a code word. We're like, oh, this is the second check. And we're just going to say, ¿cómo estás? And if they can answer that, then we know they've addressed that outcome and they can move on. If they can't answer that, we're like, oh no, friend, you need to circle back around and do these activities for remediation or extra practice. So that's kind of how we're providing that timely feedback and not at the end when it's too late. And then we have a third check. And this is a self-check. This is so important, something that I've learned from Catlin Tucker, who has so much work on blended learning, where she really addresses, why are teachers carrying so much of the work? Why are we always the ones, doing all of the work? Why can't students do some of this too? And that is really important, shifting the responsibility over. So on this self-check, students are able to take a shot at answering the question. So 2 different ways to greet someone. So they have a shot. They're going to type it in there. This is a Nearpod. And if they can do it, the next slide says, which of these did you use? So then they circle. If they did it, if they had no idea, they're going to be like, oh, okay, this is what I was supposed to do. And then on the next one, how will you answer this question? ¿Cómo te llamas? So they would answer it. And then they get to check here. Which of these did you use? So then they circle. If they had no idea, they're like, ooh, that one was hard too. And then this is our third learning outcome. ¿Cómo estás? So they respond 2 different ways. And they would circle whatever they used. And then the goodbyes, same thing. Now, this is the really important part. This is where they self-check, okay? Were you able to complete these, yes or no? If they were like, yeah, I really struggled with ¿Cómo te llamas? I said, me llamo es, then they're gonna put no. And if they answered no to these statements, they need to come see us. And that's our cue to send them back to the remediation that we're going to build out for them. So this is a self-check, self-guide for students to really get into the metacognition phase of thinking about their learning and getting control of their learning. This takes a lot of training and a lot of explicit guidance from the teacher, but it has proven to be very successful with students. Oh, lovely. Okay. So we got all of our formative checks in, and now we're like, okay, we need to make sure we are going to address students at all levels. So which remediation resources are we providing and which extension resources are we providing? So we have two things here. Obviously this list, we would want it to be a lot longer. We just didn't get there yet. But we have some things. We have a Quizlet that would allow students to get repetition with the vocabulary. We thought about creating a recap video of the last class to provide that extra input. And for extension, we have these resources. So they can go in here and look at extending their vocabulary for maybe some tier 2 vocabulary words. And then they can do the same here, thinking about emotions and responses to these questions. So these are things that these are the two pathways that we would lead students in, depending on their progress during these formative checks. Okay. Now it's the nitty gritty. So it's like, okay, well, how are they going to explore the content, AKA input? And how are they going to practice it, AKA scaffolded output? So for input, we have all of these resources for each target. Again, you could only do one target. Yours could just be one thing here, and then you'd have your activities for that. It does not have to be this crazy extravagant. So these are all input. And we decided that this was a non-negotiable. Students have to do that one. That one's very important. They can't opt out of it. They must do it. But these, you know what? There's 3. They just have to do 2. That's where we're giving them their choice. These, they can choose any 2 of them to do. Here, they have to do the first one. But you know what? They can choose between those, whatever. So then we have,
if I can jump in real quick, and also just this looks overwhelming to get all these different resources. A lot of them are the same thing that we broke off into a separate portion. For example, our reading, they get a lot of vocabulary. We use it a couple of different times. So, and a lot of them are just one or two slides. So it's not really overwhelming to create.
Yes, thank you so much for saying that. These resources are small, tiny things. Like, they're not huge, drawn out experiences. And like Lau said, we're reusing them in different ways. Excuse me. So then we have our output examples here. You can see we have like a Canvas discussion. We have a couple of different videos. We have these Genialies that Lindsay Bowen created, which are phenomenal. We have a short Kahoot, a sorting activity, different things. And again, these all link out for you so you can go later and, you know, look at things and get inspired for different activities. And then we have the reflection piece, which I'm so glad Lau reminded me is such an important component for students in their learning. They have to go back and reflect because that's when you are making those connections. That's when they are strengthening the myelin in their brain to form those connections between ideas and concepts. So we decided that they would process their learning through a Flipgrid. And I created that here for you to have a link as a template. And they would choose 2 of these sentence stems to complete. And that's all they would have to do. So after this learning experience, I feel that I can confidently start a conversation. For me, I would be like, win, like that is a huge win for them to be able to explicitly say what they're doing with their learning. All right, so I know that was super fast and furious, but those are your must-dos while you're planning for a playlist. Now, there are some could-dos. You could get into the metacognition, which we know from Catlin Tucker is huge, and have students track their learning. So she has a whole post here about a Google sheet that helps students track their learning. For me, I would introduce that maybe the 2nd or 3rd time that I do a playlist, because the first time, this is brand new for my students. I want them to effectively use the playlist, and then maybe later they can track it. And then student voice. There's so many different things you could do. You could have students create a learning experience on the topic. They could create a lesson, they could create a video. There's so many things that you could do. And if you're looking for more information about that, Catlin Tucker has great ideas in her Balanced Blended Learning book. And then aspire to do, you could present the playlist as a Genially or as a drag and drop. I don't have a Genially yet, but I do have a drag and drop that I can show you. And this is more to increase the engagement and interactiveness, I don't know if that's a word, of the experience for students. So this is the planning guide for playlists. I would like to show you what it will look like for a student. So for a student, they would receive this document. And you could share it on Google Classroom or Canvas, whatever your LMS is. They would receive this. And so it's their playlist overview. Okay, well, I have to watch this video from my teacher. And in that video, this is huge. That is where you share your screen and you walk them through the whole process. Okay, because what you want is students to refer back to that anytime they get lost in the playlist. Like, oh, what did he say? I'm gonna go back here and look. That video is really, really important, and I suggest going back and watching Allison Moy's session if you have questions about creating videos. All right, then I have to complete my daily check-in. So the student will click here and complete that survey. So then they move on, pre-assessment. Okay, if my teacher gave me back my exit ticket, I have to watch this video. All right, I didn't get an exit ticket. Oh, okay, I move on to the next step. So they just follow along, and we have the 3 targets here. So for what's your name? Oh, I have to do this, okay? I have to do the celebrity tweets, and they will go and it's a reading. So then they get into their choice. Well, there's 3 options here, but I only have to do 2. So they'll get into those and do those. And then same thing here. What they don't know, but we know, is that the yellow ones, those are practice, or sorry, those are input. They're just exploring. These are low risk, just exploring the content. And then down here, they are actually practicing with it. So they're having to provide some output with these activities. And we planned that in our document earlier. We split it that way so that it's purposeful. Now down here, same thing, just a different target. And then here it's like stop teacher table. All right, I have to do this and show my understanding. And then I visit my teacher table or Zoom meeting. Okay, so this is where you really have to personalize it to your classroom and your expectations. How are students going to get in touch with you? All right, now, if they need more practice, if they work through this activity here, which is just a short conversation, they provide a greeting, name, and a goodbye. Those are the 2 learning outcomes that they should have targeted by now. If we can't do this, if I see that they're struggling, I'm going to say, okay, you know what? You need to go back up here. Whichever activity you chose not to do, go ahead and do that one because we need some extra practice. Okay? Because here they had 3 options and they only did 2, so they should have 1 more that they can do. Same thing here. Okay? So then we move on to our 3rd learning outcome. Again, you could have just stopped with 1, but I'm just super extra. And for whatever reason, we thought it was a good idea to do all 3. So they're going to do this intro to emotions, which is required. They have to do it. Again, they have their student choice there. Now they're going to come see us and they're going to say feliz. And for us, that's a code word. We know, all right, ¿cómo estás? We have to ask them. They just completed all of these activities on how are you, so they should be able to answer that. And if they can't, I'm sending them back to do the ones they didn't do because they need some extra help. Or I'm providing feedback in the moment. It's up to you how you want to handle that. Now, every student is either going to do more practice or level up because we know we can push students to that. So we have a Quizlet there. And again, my dream is to have many more resources there. And then ready for a challenge. So here they're really getting to mix in different phrases and vocabulary instead of just saying, I feel happy. well, maybe now they can say, when I'm at basketball practice, I feel happy. Or when I'm at a birthday party, I feel hungry. I don't know, whatever it is. So that's giving them an opportunity to have more input and exposure to different ways of using the language, making meaning in different ways. So ready for challenge, let's see. All right, so then final check. This is again their self-check. They're gonna go through and track their learning. And then we have the evidence of learning. This is where I linked it for you all so that you would have access to this and see what the minor was. Probably in this setting, I wouldn't link the quiz ahead of time for students to have. It just depends on your situation, but I have linked it for you all so that it's clear what I'm even talking about. But this is where they would show me their learning, and then I would maybe have some instructions about how to access the quiz or the minor. And then when it's all said and done, they come here to reflect on their learning. So this is what a student would have. There is a column here for date completed where they can track their progress. This is the template that Catlin Tucker uses, so I went ahead and left it there. And you know, you could obviously edit that however you feel is best for your class. Okay, so now the same, oh, I keep doing that. I want to show you the same, the same information, same content, just in a different format. This is going to be a drag and drop. And on this experience, this is what students would receive. So instead of the playlist that I just went through, they would receive this slide deck, and it would be either in Canvas or Google Classroom, however you share your information with students. And this first screen would include information about what the playlist is. Here, I would put in my video. So watch this. They would watch me go through the whole playlist. Here is a flow chart. If a student is more of a visual learner, they could see where they're going. And it's the same thing as the playlist that we showed them earlier. You would just show them this instead, and this is interactive, so they would click on whatever the button is to take them to the next assignment, or they could just work through the deck in order, whatever works for them. This is where this would look really nice in a Genially. There's a Genially that we have for summer learning in FISD, and it's the same idea where they click and it takes you to a page and it works perfectly, but if you're not there yet, that is okay. This is just, this is another option. So this is linked for them here. And then they move into the activities. This is where they have their choice, right? Where we told them, okay, so what is your name? All right, I have to do celebrity tweets. That's a must do. All right, well, let me go ahead and, you know, click that, whatever. Here they build their schedule. So they're like, you know what, meme sounds interesting. I'm gonna do meme. And then I'll take a song break. All right, and then I have to choose 2 of these. So I'll do a Canvas discussion, and then I think I'll do this one. So they've just built their schedule. The beauty of this is that when a student comes to you and, you know, with the verde or whatever, and they can't answer it, they're lost, they pull this up and these 2 are left. Como te llamas song and what's your name? They need to go complete those because they need the extra practice. That's kind of what's, you know, left over. So that's what is really cool about this one. And then obviously students like the idea that they can drag and drop things. Don't knock it. I promise you, on my student survey, like my feedback this year, we used a lot of drag and drops. Students were like, I love the drag and drops. Like they just like to mess with it. So this, I would explain really clearly here in this video. I would model it in my screencast or my Loom or my Wii video, whatever it is. I would model it very clearly. This is what you need to do. okay? And I would do exactly what I just did to show them. They have a help option here, which takes them back to the video, because if you're struggling, you need to watch that again because the information is there. All right, so then we have our second learning target. Again, if you just have one, you would only have this one, and that would be good enough for that learning experience. So as they move through, this is their teacher table like we talked about before. This is the how are you learning outcome. I already filled this one in for them. They have to do that one, and they can just drag in whatever else they choose. Stop and learn here. Stop and challenge yourself or get some extra practice. Complete the self-check. Right, here's your minor. And then here's the reflection. Now, what I did on this for you is this slide following are all the versions of the slide that you can edit. Okay, if you noticed here, you can't click and edit the text. It's just an image. You can't click anywhere and change anything. But down here, after this page, you can edit all of this business. Okay, so this is yours to change, do whatever you want with it to make it work for your class if you like it. If you're like, Infa, this is too much, then do the playlist. Just do the list. That's okay. So that's it, y'all. In my main slideshow, I have all of this information linked for you, right? Oh, sorry. Right here. So under resources, it's all linked if you're like, yeah, that was a lot and I'm lost. Okay, so I have the templates, the planning guide template and the student playlist template. These are blank. So they only have the information on the left. Okay, so this is clean for you to use, add row, delete row. You're like, this was, I don't need that, whatever. That's there for you. So if you are confused, lost, I would just go here. Okay, this is where everything's clean and will help you. And then the examples that I gave you, the Spanish examples with all of the activities linked are right here where it says examples Spanish. You have the planning guide example. That's the one I walked us through every step. The student playlist and the drag and drop. Those are all there for you. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it here for a sec just so you can see. I'm gonna look at the chat. I haven't looked at the chat, so come off mute. Let me know what questions you have. How much time do we have here?
4 minutes.
Okay, we have 4 minutes. Any questions, comments? Did I lose you? Let me know and I'm happy to help. Okay, yay. I'm so glad. Again, Allison Lau is like amazing. She worked with me on this and we put it all together. This is all her work. I mean, it's just amazing. So
No, it's ours.
I told her I was going to say that.
Lauren Taylor has a question.
Okay, yes. Let me know.
Hi. I was wondering, it looked like y'all had done this, but you can link, my question is, can you link stuff to Canvas? Like, obviously you can put links and like embed LTIs and all that from Canvas going out, but can you have stuff like in the Genially, I shared it in a chat because Allie Donaldson and I are working on a Genially playlist for back to school. And so we were wondering if we could link like into Canvas. Does that make sense? Rather than linking from Canvas out.
Is this what you mean? Like when you click on the link from the playlist, it takes you here? Or do you mean the other way around?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
You can.
Like,
So
if I'm in Genially and I'm making my playlist, can I embed links to Canvas and actually have them work for when the student clicks on them?
You grab the link from right here. That's
Okay,
the only
I mean, it works like that? That's what I, okay.
It does work. Yes, that's what I did for e-learning when in the spring. On my plan, I linked everything to Canvas, and there's two things. First, the student has to be logged into Canvas or it'll say access denied.
Right.
And then second, you have to have these in your course, but you would have that obviously. Right now, they're not there yet, so you can't link them yet. you have to wait until they get published on the 20th or whatever, and then you could link it in there into your course. But yes, the only way I know is to grab the link from the toolbar.
But you can do that, like, even if you're inside a page, like, because I want them to go to a specific page, it would work that way,
Yep.
just using the URL.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, and if students say, I got access denied, that's because they have to log into Canvas in another tab first, and then it'll work when they click on it. Okay, are you going to do most of your online lessons using? Yes, I am going to use playlists for sure, choice boards, any sort of blended learning. And let me tell you why. Because at first, it is quite a bit of work for me, but I just planned 3 days of learning, maybe more, probably more, for my students. And now during class, I'm available, and I'm just going to be giving all kinds of feedback. And it's going to be meaningful feedback, not good job or you got it, keep going. It's like, okay, I think you said I feel happy, but let's practice on why or when do you feel happy? You know, I can get down to that level with students now because everyone else is on their own track, on their own path. Do you make a student copy of the playlist? Yes, the student copy is this one here. And it's also on this page where it says student playlist template. That one's blank for you, so you don't have to delete all of the stuff I had in there.
Genially and Pear Deck are not going to work together, say sad.
I can't think of how those would work together.
We were lucky enough to get Nearpod at the district level for us for the FISC this year. So that's what we'll be using instead of Pear Deck, but they're very similar. There is a free version of Nearpod as well.
Okay, y'all, well, it is 9:50, so I'm going to hop off, and I encourage you to join us back on the main Zoom. If you don't remember where to find that information, it's on the playlist that you received from Brandon.
And it's in the chat now.
Yes, thank you. It's in the chat. So I will see you there. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Adios.